The iron gates slammed shut behind him with a finality that echoed through his bones. Thomas Reed stood on the cracked pavement outside Westfield Correctional Facility, a free man for the first time in 5 years. The autumn sun felt different on his skin, sharper, almost accusatory, as if even the light knew he didn't deserve to be here while his daughter was somewhere out there, alone. 5 years, 60 months, 1,825 days of counting ceiling tiles, of reading the same letter until the paper disintegrated, of clutching a photograph that had long since faded from his desperate fingers. In his pocket, he carried exactly 3 things: $47 in gate money, a bus ticket to Riverside, and a photograph of an 8-year-old girl with gap-toothed smile and pigtails. His daughter, Lily. She would be 13 now. A teenager he wouldn't recognize, who probably wouldn't recognize him. The thought made his chest tight. Thomas walked to the bus stop, his movements stiff from years of confined spaces and regulated routines. The world outside had moved on without him. New buildings stood where old ones had been. Cars looked different. Even the air smelled wrong. Too clean, too free, too full of possibilities he was no longer sure he deserved. The bus ride took 3 hours. Thomas sat in the back, watching the landscape change from urban sprawl to rural farmland. Each mile brought him closer to his daughter and farther from the man he used to be. Prison changes you in ways that freedom can't undo. It teaches you to be small, to take up less space, to expect nothing good. But it also teaches you to survive. And Thomas had survived for one reason only: Lily. When the judge sentenced him for a robbery he didn't commit, when his court-appointed lawyer barely fought the charges, when his own brother testified against him in exchange for immunity, Thomas had wanted to die. But then he thought of Lily's face at the courthouse, confused and crying, asking why the men were taking Daddy away. He made her a promise that day. "I'll come back for you, baby girl. No matter how long it takes, Daddy will come back." She had nodded, believing him with the absolute faith only children possess. And he had carried that belief like a torch through every dark moment of the last 5 years. The bus dropped him at the edge of Riverside at 4 in the afternoon. The town had changed, but not much. Same diner on Main Street, same hardware store, same church with the crooked steeple. Home but not home. A place that held memories like landmines waiting to explode. Thomas's first stop was the address his former sister-in-law, Patricia, had given him in her last letter. She was the one who had taken Lily after his arrest, after Child Services determined that an 8-year-old couldn't live alone. Patricia had promised to care for Lily, to keep her safe, to let Thomas see her when he got out. The letters had stopped coming 2 years ago. Thomas had written dozens more, each one returned with "Return TO Sender" stamped across the envelope. He had called collect from the prison phone, but the number had been disconnected. For 2 years, he had been operating on faith and fear, praying that Lily was okay while nightmares showed him otherwise. The address Patricia had given him was a small house on Elm Street. Thomas walked up the gravel driveway, his heart hammering. The yard was overgrown, the paint peeling, but there were signs of life. A car in the driveway, lights in the windows, a child's bicycle rusting by the porch. He knocked. Once, twice, 3 times. The door opened to reveal a woman he barely recognized. Patricia had aged badly in 5 years. She was gaunt, with hollow eyes and the nervous energy of someone carrying secrets. When she saw Thomas, her face drained of color. "Thomas," she whispered, "you're early. They said you wouldn't be out for another year." "Good behavior," he replied, though his jaw was tight. "Where's Lily?" Patricia's eyes darted away. "She's not here." "Where is she?" "Thomas, you need to understand. Where is my daughter?" The sharpness in his voice made her flinch. She wrapped her arms around herself defensively. Things got complicated. I couldn't keep her. She was too much to handle, too angry, too difficult. I tried, Thomas, I really tried. But where is she? Patricia's hands trembled as she fumbled for a piece of paper from her pocket. An address, scrawled in hurried handwriting. Greg took her, said he could straighten her out. He's got that farm outside town, the one with the red barn. Thomas felt ice flood his veins. Greg, his brother, the same brother who had testified against him, who had lied on the stand, who had taken a plea deal that sent Thomas to prison in his place. You gave my daughter to Greg? His voice was deadly quiet now. He's family, Patricia said weakly. And he offered. I couldn't afford to keep her anymore. The state benefits barely covered anything. Thomas turned and walked away before he said something he couldn't take back. Behind him, Patricia called out, Thomas, wait. You have to understand, it wasn't my fault. But Thomas was already running. The farm was 15 miles outside town. Thomas walked the entire distance, his mind a storm of rage and terror. Greg's farm, the place where they had grown up, where their father had ruled with fists and fury, where Thomas had learned that sometimes survival meant becoming invisible. The same place he had sworn Lily would never have to see. The sun was setting when he arrived, painting the sky in shades of blood and bruise. The farmhouse looked exactly as he remembered. Weathered wood, sagging porch, windows like blind eyes staring into nothing. And behind it, the red barn that had always seemed to loom larger than any building had a right to. Thomas approached slowly, his body remembering this place even as his mind tried to reject it. Chickens scratched in the yard. A dog barked once, then fell silent. Somewhere a radio played country music too loud. He walked past the main house toward the barn. Something was pulling him there, some instinct he didn't want to name. The barn door was slightly ajar, and from inside came the faint flicker of a fire. Thomas pulled the door open. The smell hit him first. Smoke, mildew, unwashed bodies, and beneath it all, the sour stench of neglect. His eyes adjusted to the dim interior, and what he saw made his knees buckle. In the far corner, huddled on a pile of dirty blankets next to a pathetic fire, was a girl. She was painfully thin, her clothes hanging off her frame like grave clothes. Her hair, once honey blonde and shiny, now hung in tangled mats around a face that was all sharp angles and hollow eyes. But Thomas would have recognized her anywhere. Lily! The girl's head snapped up, her eyes wide with something between hope and terror. She stared at him for a long moment, her lips moving soundlessly, as if she had forgotten how to speak. Then, in a voice like breaking glass, "Dad!" Thomas crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and fell to his knees beside her. Up close, the damage was even worse. She was skeletal, her wrists so thin he could circle them with his thumb and forefinger. Her face bore the faded yellow of old bruises. Her hands were covered in calluses and cuts. "Oh, baby girl," Thomas whispered, his voice breaking. "What did they do to you?" Lily's body began to shake. She reached out one trembling hand to touch his face, as if checking that he was real. "You came back," she whispered. "I knew you would. I told them you'd come back. But they said you forgot about me. They said you were never getting out." "Never," Thomas said fiercely, pulling her into his arms. She weighed nothing. "I could never forget you. I counted every day, Lily. Every single day." She collapsed against him, and Thomas felt her body racked with silent sobs. She cried without sound, as if she had learned that noise brought punishment. He held her. This child who should have been wearing makeup and giggling about boys, but instead was living like an animal in a barn, and felt something inside him break permanently. "How long have you been out here?" he asked when she finally pulled back. 2 years, Lily whispered. Since Aunt Patricia gave me to Uncle Greg. He said I needed to learn discipline, that I was too soft, too weak. He said you were a criminal and I was going to end up just like you unless someone taught me right. Thomas closed his eyes, fighting the rage that threatened to overwhelm him. Where does he keep you? Here. Sometimes in the house if there's company coming, but mostly here. He locks the door at night so I can't run away. Says I should be grateful he's feeding me at all. Feeding you? Thomas looked at her skeletal frame. When did you last eat? Lily thought about it. Yesterday morning. Maybe. The days kind of blur together. Thomas stood up, gently pulling Lily with him. We're leaving. Right now. Dad, no. Fear flashed across her face. He'll be angry. He'll come after us. He said if I ever tried to leave, he'd... She stopped, unable or unwilling to finish the sentence. I don't care what he said, Thomas replied. He's not keeping you here one more minute. They had just reached the barn door when it swung open violently. Greg Reed stood silhouetted against the dying sunlight, a large man with a red face and mean eyes. When he saw Thomas, his expression went from surprise to anger to something uglier. Well, Greg drawled. The prodigal criminal returns. Didn't expect you for another year at least. I'm taking my daughter, Thomas said quietly. Your daughter? Greg laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You lost the right to call her that when you went to prison. She's under my guardianship now. Legal and everything. Legal guardianship that involves locking a child in a barn? Starving her? Working her like a slave? I'm teaching her discipline, Greg snapped. Something you never learned. She was wild when Patricia brought her here, spoiled rotten by you and that weak wife of yours. Someone had to break her of those bad habits. Thomas felt Lily's hand tighten in his. She was shaking again, but this time not from cold or hunger, from fear. Fear of the man who had been her jailer for 2 years. We're leaving, Thomas repeated. You can let us go peacefully, or I can make this difficult. Your choice. Greg's face darkened. You threatening me? You're on parole, little brother. One wrong move and you're back in that cell. Think about that before you do something stupid. I've thought about nothing else for 5 years, Thomas said. And you know what I realized? I don't care about parole. I don't care about going back to prison. The only thing I care about is getting my daughter out of here alive. So ask yourself, are you willing to die for your pride? Something in Thomas's voice made Greg hesitate. Prison had hardened Thomas in ways that his brother hadn't anticipated. This wasn't the same man who had been led away in handcuffs 5 years ago. This was someone who had survived hell and come back with nothing left to lose. Greg's hand twitched toward his belt, where Thomas knew he kept a knife. But before he could move, a voice called out from the farmhouse. Greg! Sheriff's here. Both men turned to see a police cruiser pulling into the driveway. Thomas felt a moment of pure terror. If the police took him back now, before he could secure Lily's safety, she would disappear into the system again. Or worse, stay here with Greg. But the person who stepped out of the cruiser wasn't a sheriff. It was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and the bearing of someone who had seen too much human ugliness to be surprised by anything. She wore the badge of the County Child Protective Services. Mr. Reed. She was looking at Thomas. I'm Laura Chun, CPS. We received an anonymous call about a child living in inadequate conditions at this address. I'm here to investigate. Thomas could have kissed whoever made that call. Patricia? A neighbor? God himself? The child is my daughter, he said quickly. Lily Reed. She's 13. She's been living in that barn for 2 years under the guardianship of my brother, Greg Reed. Laura Chen's expression hardened. She walked past Greg into the barn, and Thomas watched as her professional composure cracked just slightly. When she emerged, her face was stone. "Mr. Greg Reed, I'm taking immediate custody of this child. You'll be hearing from our legal department and likely the district attorney's office." "You can't do that," Greg blustered. "I have legal guardianship. I have papers. Papers that will be voided as soon as I file my report," Laura replied coldly. "Mr. Thomas Reed, do you have identification and proof of paternity?" Thomas pulled out his prison release papers and Lily's birth certificate, which he had managed to keep through everything. Laura examined them carefully. "Your parole status? Released this morning. Full custody rights restored as part of my release agreement. The conviction was overturned last month based on new evidence." Laura nodded slowly. "Then, as far as I'm concerned, this child is going home with her father. Greg Reed, I strongly suggest you speak to a lawyer. You'll be hearing from us." The small motel room smelled like disinfectant and old cigarettes, but to Thomas it might as well have been paradise. It had 2 beds, hot water, and most importantly, a lock on the door that only he controlled. Lily sat on one of the beds, freshly showered, wearing clothes Laura Chan had purchased from a nearby store. She looked younger somehow, more fragile now that she was clean and safe. She had eaten 2 sandwiches, a cup of soup, and an apple with the desperate intensity of someone who expected the food to disappear at any moment. Now she just sat, staring at her hands, as if she couldn't quite believe this was real. "Lily." Thomas sat carefully beside her. "Can I ask you something?" She nodded without looking up. "How did you survive? 2 years in that place with Greg treating you like that. What kept you going?" Lily was quiet for so long that Thomas thought she might not answer. Then, slowly, she reached into her pocket and pulled out something small and tattered. A photograph, the same one Thomas had carried in prison. Lily at 8 years old, smiling, happy, whole. "You kept one too?" Thomas's voice broke. "You gave it to me before they took you away," Lily whispered. "You said to look at it whenever I forgot what love looked like. So I looked at it every night. And I told myself that the dad in this picture was coming back. That he wouldn't leave me there forever." Thomas pulled her into his arms, and this time she clung to him with the fierce desperation of someone who had spent too long alone. "I'm so sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." "You came back," Lily said simply. "You promised you would, and you did. That's what matters." But Thomas knew it would take more than that. The road ahead was long. Lily would need therapy, medical care, proper nutrition. She was 3 years behind in school. She had trauma that would take years to process. There would be legal battles over Greg's guardianship, investigations, possibly criminal trials. And Thomas himself was starting from nothing. No job, no home, no savings. Just a man and his daughter against a world that had already proven it could be monstrously unfair. But as he held Lily and felt her breathing even out as she finally fell into safe sleep, Thomas felt something he hadn't experienced in 5 years. Hope. The small apartment wasn't much, 2 bedrooms in a rundown building on the edge of town. But it was theirs. Thomas had found work at a warehouse, loading trucks for minimum wage. It was hard work, but honest. And every paycheck, no matter how small, represented freedom. Lily was enrolled in the local middle school, with weekly sessions with a trauma therapist named Dr. Sarah Kim. The first few months had been rough. Lily had nightmares that left her screaming. She hoarded food under her bed, unable to believe it would be there tomorrow. She flinched at loud noises and unexpected movements. But slowly, incrementally, she was healing. Thomas woke one Saturday morning to the smell of burning pancakes. He rushed into the kitchen to find Lily at the stove, tongue poking out in concentration as she tried to flip a pancake that was definitely more black than golden. "Morning, Dad," she said, grinning sheepishly. "I was trying to make breakfast." Emphasis on trying. Thomas laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. "How about we try together?" They salvaged the pancakes, making a fresh batch that were only slightly burnt. They ate together at their small table, and Thomas watched as Lily actually smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "Dr. Kim says I'm making progress," Lily said between bites. "You are," Thomas agreed. "I'm so proud of you, Lily. So proud." "Dad." She put down her fork, suddenly serious. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything. Do you regret it? Coming back for me? Your life would be easier if you had just started over somewhere else. No traumatized daughter to deal with. No legal battles, no." "Stop," Thomas interrupted firmly. "Lily, look at me. You are the only reason I survived prison. You are the only reason I fought to prove my innocence. You are the only reason I exist. Do you understand? There is nothing in this world more important to me than you. Nothing." Tears welled in Lily's eyes. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, baby girl. More than all the stars in all the skies." It was their old game, the one they used to play when she was little. Lily's smile widened. "More than all the fish in all the oceans? More than all the grains of sand on all the beaches? More than all the books in all the libraries? More than all the dreams anyone's ever dreamed?" They sat together in their small kitchen, eating burnt pancakes and laughing, and Thomas thought, this is what freedom really means. Not the absence of bars and chains, but the presence of love. The ability to sit with your daughter and know that tomorrow you'll both still be here, together. Greg was awaiting trial on child endangerment and abuse charges. Patricia had been fined and placed under investigation. The legal system that had failed Thomas so completely was at least trying to make things right. But the real victory wasn't in the courtroom. It was here, in this moment, with his daughter finally smiling again. Thomas stood outside Riverside Middle School, waiting for the final bell. Other parents gathered around him, chatting and checking phones. He had become a familiar face here, the dad who showed up early every day, who volunteered for field trips, who made sure everyone knew his daughter mattered. The doors burst open and students flooded out. Thomas spotted Lily immediately. She was walking with two other girls, all three of them laughing about something. She had gained weight, healthy weight that made her face round again. Her hair was styled in the braids she loved. She wore clothes that fit and shoes that weren't held together with duct tape. When she saw him, her face lit up. "Dad!" She jogged over, her friends trailing behind. "This is my dad," she told them proudly. "Dad, this is Madison and Zoe." "Nice to meet you girls," Thomas said. He'd learned all their names, all the gossip, all the drama of 13-year-old life. Because that was his job now, to be present, to care, to show up. As they walked home, Lily chatted about her day. She'd gotten an A on her history test. She was trying out for the school play. Madison's brother was being annoying. Normal things. Beautiful, ordinary teenage things. At home, Thomas helped her with homework while dinner cooked. They ate together, cleaned up together, watched a movie together. When it was time for bed, he kissed her forehead the way he used to when she was small. "Good night, baby girl. Good night, Dad. Love you. Love you more." "Not possible," she said, grinning. Thomas closed her door and stood in the hallway of their small apartment. It wasn't much. They struggled with bills. The car barely ran. His back ached from warehouse work. But Lily was safe. She was healing. She was laughing again. and that made every sacrifice, every hardship, every moment of those 5 years in hell absolutely worth it. Thomas sat in the audience of Riverside High School's graduation ceremony, a lump in his throat as he watched his daughter walk across the stage. Lily Reed, honor student, accepted her diploma and scholarship letter to the state university. She had done it. They had done it. Against all odds, despite every obstacle, they had built a life together. When Lily's name was called, Thomas stood and cheered louder than anyone else in the auditorium. She grinned and waved at him, 18 years old and full of the future she deserved. After the ceremony, she ran to him, her graduation gown flying behind her. "We did it, Dad. You did it," he corrected, pulling her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you," Lily said seriously. "You came back for me when no one else would. You fought for me. You never gave up. And I never will," Thomas promised. "That's what family does. We show up. We fight. We survive. Together." Lily's friends were calling her name, wanting pictures. She kissed his cheek. "Love you, Dad. Thank you for everything." As she ran off, laughing and alive and free, Thomas felt tears on his face. 5 years in prison, 2 years searching, years of rebuilding, all of it worth it for this moment, for his daughter's laughter, for her future, for the simple, miraculous fact that they were both still here, still fighting, still loving each other. Sometimes the happy ending isn't about justice being served or wrongs being righted. Sometimes it's just about showing up, about keeping promises, about proving that love can survive anything, even hell itself. No matter how dark the night, no matter how impossible the odds, never stop fighting for the people you love. Because sometimes, being someone's reason to survive is the only reason you need to keep going.